The following is a presentation of Project Independence and WCWP. Project Independence is the Aging in Place initiative of the town of North Hempstead. We provide programs and services designed to assist and support the older town residents who wish to remain in their homes as they age. If we don't currently provide a service, we will try and connect you to that service. Call 311 or 869-6311 to get more information or receive services.
Welcome to Project Independence and You.
Welcome to Senior Talk Radio here on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. This is Project Independence and You. I'm your host, John Ryan, and my co-host today is Otto Lohse.
Morning,
Actually,
John.
I missed you, Otto, last week, and a week without Otto is like a week without sunshine. So I'm glad we're together again. And
me too, John. Me too. I'm glad you're here.
yeah, and I'm feeling well, which is the main thing. And I'm going to introduce our guest, but before I do, I just have to, I do every week. I have to reach out to Christina, who's the producer. And each week, in the middle of this pandemic, she manages to put a show together. And it really is. It's you put a great show together in a normal time, but there's such an extra strain on you. I want to thank you for making sure the seniors of the town get information that's important and quality information. Today,
John.
You're very welcome today. Today, dear, we have the Assistant Comptroller for the state of New York, Joseph Galante, who I know Joe for years, and he's a wonderful guy. And with him, we have Maria Smith, who is a project director for New York State Comptroller's Office. And I want to welcome you guys both, and I want to thank you because I've been reading some of the stuff. I read Tom's newsletter every week. But you guys have been from day one right on top of the situation and trying to help people out. And where I want to start with, but we're going to go all over the place. And eventually later on in the show, I want to get to unclaimed funds, which is such an important thing. But I want to start with the financial survival toolkit. Because between scams, between IRA, I read this morning that 1/4 of the population is invading their pension plans already because they need money. They need to live. And the stimulus check was fine, whoever got it, but that's not a life changer. It doesn't even pay a rent for somebody for a month. So, I mean, there comes a point where we can't exaggerate that we've given people so much money to live. But whoever wants to start, either Maria or Joe, how did that come about? And again, I just have nothing for praise. How can somebody get one of those kits? I know it's online, but you have to direct us there.
Sure. Well, thank you, John, for having us, and Otto and Christina. We appreciate the opportunity to come on today to speak to your audience about a lot of the difficulties people are having right now. And Comptroller DiNapoli realized right away that not only was this a terrible public health crisis, but it was going to lead to a real economic crisis, not only for state and local government, but also for individuals in the state. With so many people unemployed, with so many businesses closed and shuttered, and the nonprofit sector being put upon to provide so many new services, he realized right away that people were going to need some tools and resources and information that they could trust to navigate through these uncharted waters that we're going through. Maria and myself worked on the Comptroller's Financial Empowerment Initiative, which is an ongoing initiative to try to give New Yorkers, again, resources, tools, trusted information to make better decisions about their personal finances. And in that capacity, Maria and I discussed the idea of pulling together a web page for our website that would contain this information for New Yorkers. And I have to say, within 1 week, our team pulled together the information. We got all the approvals that we needed through our office, and Comptroller DiNapoli put his blessing on it, and we went live a week later, which was a lot of work, but I think well worth it. So our website is www.osc.state.ny.us. And when you go to the main page of the Comptroller's page, there's a link there for the COVID-19 financial survival toolkit.
Okay.
I yeah, I went on that site, and I tell you, I have to give a lot of credit to who the people are that organized it, because I like the way it has the highlights laid out, and then you can click, and frankly, you could spend all day on that site, um, I think. Um, and you've really cut the time down that it should take somebody to get information, because you go to the category that most you're looking for. So anyhow, congratulations, a job well done.
Maria, did you want to say something?
Yeah, when we put it together, we understood that it was going to have an economic impact on people, an adverse economic impact. But when we started it, I suggested that before we do anything, we look at the health component, because if you don't have your health, you don't really have anything. And, you're not going to worry about paying your mortgage if you're dead, basically, or very, very ill.
Very well put, Maria. Very well put.
That's the last thing on your mind, right? So the thing of it was that and especially that because there was so much uncertainty, and this was really at the very beginning, we referred people to what we had at the time, which was the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the New York State Department of Health. And we also wanted people to know that they could get emotional support. And we provided the hotline for that, the COVID-19 emotional support hotline, because we realized that the pandemic was really serious in terms of whether or not you came down with the virus, physically. If you were caring for a loved one or knew of someone, that was a real emotional strain on somebody and the family. So we wanted to that's why that's listed. If you go to the website, that's the first item on there is your health. Because, it's true, your health, if you have your health, you have everything. And we wanted to definitely emphasize that for people.
I agree. And actually, one thing that I want to bring up, which I think is very important, I think I spoke to Joe about this. I'm a financial advisor, but I like this website from the fact that anybody who goes to it, it's all government organizations and agencies. So nobody is going to be taken advantage of. Unfortunately, 2 weeks ago, I think it was, we had TJ Hatter on from the Attorney General's office. The scams that are going on around are ridiculous, and people are thinking they're doing the right thing because somebody said to call somebody. Here, by going to this website, everything is directed through an agency of the government, so people can rest assured that they're getting the proper information. Nobody's trying to take anything from them. And that's, nowadays, it's a terrible, terrible thing to say, but the level of people trying to take advantage of people, during a pandemic, it's sad. It's sad as the talk about a human being taking advantage of another human being.
Yeah, no, it is terrible. And, one thing that Comptroller DiNapoli has been adamant about is that we have to very carefully vet every piece of information we put on this website. So every day, our team who put together the page goes through to make sure all of the links are still accurate, that nothing has been hacked, nothing has been, compromised. And each of the links that we have initially started the web page with, and the ones that we've added subsequent, because we do add new resources each week, we've vetted them very, very carefully through our team, through our legal team, and through our communications team. So it takes a lot of folks to make sure, that the final product is one that people can trust. But that is so important to the State Controller's Office to make sure that we're giving out accurate and reliable information.
And
Right.
the other thing, John, we between our team, we actually called the numbers that are provided to make sure that we were really directing people to the right resource. Many times people get frustrated. They're sent to a link or to a phone number, and they dial it and it's a wrong number, or it's a dead line. We actually went through each and every link and each and every phone number to reiterate what Joe just said, to see how we would be treated. I wound up calling the court system to find out about what would happen if I couldn't pay my mortgage. And I was told, no, at that point, there was a 90-day freeze moratorium on evictions. But so we tested everything out as if we were the consumer.
That's very, very important. I never thought of something like that. I mean, it's a government link, so to speak. So who would assume you should check it? But some of those links, the numbers changed or something's going on there, which is nothing wrong with it. It could be a dated link. And then the person gets frustrated by going to the controller's office website and say, I called it 10 times and nobody answers. So now you have a wonderful thing going on that actually is making people upset. What a tremendous thing to do. Otto, you had a question?
Yeah, basically, scams are, and by the way, we won't bring up the fact that Joe got scammed in his own home, but we can get into that at another time. I saw that on Facebook.
It's all the time, that's for sure, Otto.
But we could do
Was
that
it a real
later.
scam or something his daughters did to him?
Right. But my question, it's not a question really, it's just a thought. Like like a portal, basically. You're bringing together a lot of different locations under one roof, if you will. And I think with scams, that's very important because there are so many places that people can report scams to. And I think it's a good thing to have a central point, if you will, where all the information can be pulled together. And what I'm seeing is that your survival kit, basically, that part of it does that. It pulls a lot of it together, which is a good thing. And that's all I really had to say about it. I think it's a good idea that it acts as a portal or a funnel, bringing everything together.
Well, thanks, Otto, for that, because we did take a lot of care to make sure that the section on scams really covered the whole gamut of what's happening and the websites that really keep up to date on the most recent scams, because that's the whole thing, is staying a step ahead of the fraudsters, because they're usually a step ahead of everybody else. So we put together a pretty comprehensive list there, everything from the Federal Communications Commission, the Federal Trade Commission. But also one thing that many people don't realize is here at the State Controller's Office, we have an Office of Investigations, and that investigations office has a fraud hotline, which takes complaints of fraud from residents of New York State, whether it be against the local government, a school district, or just a general fraud complaint. And we work with law enforcement, we work with the Attorney General's office, with district attorneys throughout the state to investigate and prosecute those fraud claims. So I would love to give that phone number out. Our phone number is 1-888-672-4555. And that's, again, our fraud hotline for the State Controller's Office, 1-888-672-4555.
This is Project Independence and You. I'm your host, John Ryan, and my co-host today is Otto Lohse.
Morning.
And we are having a wonderful conversation with the Assistant Controller of the State of New York, Joseph Galante, and Maria Smith, who is a project director for the New York State Controller's Office. And we were talking about the website they put up, but I want to start now this segment with something that I read within their website, which is so important, and that is updating the beneficiary information, which is on the website. And we have over 100,000 people dead through Corona. And I'm going to turn around and say, well, it makes no difference. Most of them are adults. So they were somebody's beneficiary, or they have a beneficiary. And God forbid now the other person would die in that couple. You go to court, you have a mess on your hands. And so people need to turn around and update the beneficiary forms, whether it's at the bank, make it a transfer on death of the next person, etc. But I think that was an important thing, and I don't know how that came about. Maybe Maria, you'll tell me.
I'm actually going to defer to Joe because he's the knower of all things about it. Especially with retirees, but
yeah, well, it's a very good point, John. And unfortunately, I've seen, unfortunately, far too many cases of people who are members of the state retirement system who didn't necessarily keep their information up to date with the retirement system. And no matter what retirement system or whether it's an insurance company, everyone should do this. But when it relates to the New York State retirement system, a few things we're trying to do during this time. Our staff is working remotely. We have hundreds of staff people that work in the state retirement system, and they're doing an amazing job, having to work remotely from their homes. We have some staff in the office. We've managed to continue for people wanting to retire. Their services are there. All the other services are in place. But one of the things we are stressing during this time, two things actually, switching to direct deposit is so important for people in this day and age, because live checks, unfortunately, between mail theft and just issues with the mail getting out in a time like this. If you have direct deposit and you sign up for that with New York State, with the pension fund, we will, your check will be there the day before, normally the first day of the month, and it'll be on time and it'll be in your account and accessible. The second thing we're stressing to everyone is keep your beneficiaries up to date, because life changes, and in fact, my wife and I just went over our member statement last week, and we realized that on her account that our second child wasn't added, because the last time we updated it was after our first child was born. So we updated our forms now, but it's easy to let that kind of thing slip, and it can create real problems when the time comes. Another thing we were very proud of just last week, Governor Cuomo signed a bill into law that we had proposed that would provide benefits for those first responders who have died in light of the COVID-19 situation. And in some cases, had they not reached retirement age or been in retirement status, people in that situation, their spouses and beneficiaries could have lost their benefits for life. And through this bill that the governor signed, will ensure that their heirs get the benefits they deserve.
That's tremendous. And actually, I just want to touch base on what you said in reference to updating your papers with your second child. Joe's not an old person, you're a young guy, and you got young children. But one never knows what happens tomorrow. And you have a plan, and then all of a sudden, you wind up with a minor child, but you can have a family situation where there's fighting going on, and now you have a child who's going to be used as a pawn. Who's, do we keep them together? Do we separate them? Of course, you want to keep them together. And so doing beneficiaries, doing all that information doesn't mean you have to be 75 and older. At any point in time, once you are married, in my mind, you have to keep your beneficiary forms organized. Once you have a child, it's even more important, because then there has to be a guardian, a custodian. God forbid something happened to two of you. And if you have two children, do you want them separated? Whatever. So I compliment you on that, and I will guarantee you that 50 to 60% of people your age don't even do that at this point. It's a terrible thing, but I'm sure it's the truth. Otto?
Well, yeah, you don't just have to be married either, though. There's a lot of people who are single who better take care of who's going to be their beneficiary, because they can have huge complications. I'm not a lawyer, but I've had life experience with being an executor a number of times, and it can get messy. And I don't understand why people don't pay attention. Just make a list of whatever assets you have, whatever policies you have, and then indicate who the beneficiaries are. And it's an ongoing proposition. It changes over time. Circumstances come along, somebody dies, unfortunately, or whatever, and things change. So anyhow, I'm in 1,000% agreement.
Actually, Joe and Maria, if you're looking for a referral source, you call Otto, because I don't know a man who has put together a better set of papers in my life. I swear, and Christina's going to prove, I mean, she'll support me on that. It's unbelievable. Everything, every T is crossed, every I is dotted for him and his family. Well, that's what it should be. Death
Well,
is terrible
And,
enough.
you know,
that
It's
comes
in-
from hard
it's-
experience, all right? It comes from witnessing things where that wasn't done, and it gets messy. It breaks up families. It causes all kinds of problems. And a lot of people like to make believe they're going to be here forever, and they don't do anything about it. But the facts are nobody's going to be here forever, and you might as well try to take care of the people who will be here when it's over. That's as simple as I can put it.
Very reminder, to Maria and myself as we put together the Comptroller's Financial Empowerment Initiative. It is a very good topic to make sure we stress to people because, you can have all the assets in the world, but if you don't, handle them the right way, like you say, you could leave a mess to everybody left behind. Sure.
Well, I think also this, if you don't mind, it can segue into how we started this whole program about financial empowerment and education. We realized after doing a lot of study, frankly, that most people don't like to talk about money with their children, with even their spouses. And the Comptroller is committed, and there was an executive order signed in December of 2019 that this office is now committed to educating all New York State residents about financial literacy, if you will, to make sure people know, checking, deposit, interest, mortgage, you name it. Most people don't, it's not taught in school, the basic financial skills that you need to really go out and be an adult. And part of the problem is, and we've been dealing with, unfortunately, a lot of people who are having difficulty getting their unemployment through this awful time. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to, they don't have any money saved for a rainy day. There is none. And, my parents grew up during the Depression, and boy, we learned early on, you always put money away for that rainy day, because the rainy day sometimes comes and it comes hard. So the one thing I'm taking away from this awful pandemic experience is if we can reach people, even if it's $5 a week that you put away, whatever it is, put something away, something, go without your Starbucks latte, mochaccino, or whatever it is,
I agree.
It is, just do it because it's so, so important.
And in light of that too, John, just back to the COVID-19 financial survival toolkit that we put together on our webpage at www.osc.state.my.us. We did add a section there on personal finance information and education. And there are resources and links there really for all ages. And one of the thoughts we had in mind is so many parents are now home homeschooling their children as a result of the schools being closed. So we did include also a section in there for kids. And the grandchildren of many of your listeners also would benefit from some of these. And there's some really great interactive online tools that are available. So we've linked to a few of those. And also we have information really for every age person on there, things to watch with your personal finances. And there's just a lot of training out there that's available for free. And just want to make sure people are aware.
What I see in what I do from a financial planning perspective, 65 to 70 and under is okay. Ballpark. A lot of the clients that I get are referrals. They're women. To be honest with you, the husband dies. They don't know where anything was because he never told. They don't know how to pay a bill. They don't know how much they have in their checking account. And I'm saying, but we can afford the house. I said, can you really afford it? How much is the pension? How much is the Social Security? How much are you getting in interest and dividends? And they know nothing. And it's wrong because I don't know what the percentage is, but the men die first, so therefore why leave your wife having no clue as to what's going on? And it really is. It's a shame. So, a website like this, people have to, and when I say a 55-year-old, I think is a little bit more attuned to what's going on. and younger people. Like Joe's doing the work, not earlier, but Joe's a younger guy. But people have to wake up. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You'd be surprised that, I mean, you do it for a living, but I've been speaking to people from all over the age spectrum, male, female, you know, everything. And a lot of people don't have any savings, and they're younger. It's rather incredible. It's frightening, actually. I mean, not to add more fuel to the fire, because it is such a scary time, but it's almost like they just don't think tomorrow will never happen.
Right. And my wife is a special ed teacher, and it makes no difference where she works. And you're not making $1 million being a special ed teacher. And she says these girls come in, the younger girls, with a Gucci bag, which is the entire paycheck. And she says, my wife is different. She'll go to Kohl's and buy a bag, you know, for $15 or $20. And she's, you have to have that bag. But that's a whole nother story. We're going to take a break. You're listening to Senior Talk Radio here on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. We'll be right back.
So I get this call from my grandma, and she's like,
"What's a podcast, and how much does it cost?"
So I tell her, podcasts are like radio shows, but you can download them on any device and listen to them anywhere at any time, and they're free. And then she says,
"I see, but where can you find good ones?"
And I'm like, go to wcwp.org/podcast and check out the lineup of original shows, or download any podcast app on your phone or tablet and search for LIU Studios. And she's all like,
"Oh, that sounds easy."
And then she asked me what an app is.
LIU Studios Podcasts, available on any podcast app. You know, those little button things on your phone screen. Just ask your grandkids.
Project Independence is the aging in place initiative of the town of North Hempstead. One of the many services we offer is help at home with minor home maintenance. Call 311 or 869-6311 to get more information or receive services.
Welcome back to Senior Talk Radio here on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. This is Project Independence and You. I'm your host, John Ryan, and my co-host is Otto Lohse, and it's always a pleasure having Otto.
Nap is over, John.
And today we have with us two people from the New York State Comptroller's office, and that's the Assistant Comptroller, who's Joseph Galante, and the Special Projects Director, who's Maria Smith. What I didn't do, and it's an oversight, and I want to correct that now, is acknowledge and compliment our New York State Comptroller, Tom DiNapoli. One, for hiring people like you, but more importantly, since he has taken over that office, and I know Tom, he is just an exemplary human being, government official, and any other adjective you want to put in front of his name. And really, New York should be nothing but proud of having him as one of our senior elected officials. That's his commercial. So enough about Tom. Now we'll go to Otto.
It's certainly a pleasure.
Yeah, well, I just a couple of thoughts to add to what Maria talked about and you talked about, and Joe. The fact that people didn't save any money for a rainy day, if you will, that goes across all income levels too. I mean, I know people who make a lot of money, and all of a sudden they lose their job and they're broke. They're in debt up to their eyeballs, and they've been, you know, overspending all along. If there's nothing else that comes out of this whole Corona thing, I can see it with my own children and grandchildren that there's going to be a different attitude about how they spend their money, because it becomes much more evident that things like this pandemic can happen, and you better be prepared to go through some rough patches. And, you know, I'm hoping that one of the things that comes out of adversity comes a little bit of knowledge that says, you know, maybe we ought to wise up a little bit and not buy the Gucci bag, and we don't have to have it now. You know, I think that whole attitude might change some, hopefully. Not with everybody, but I think it will with some. But anyhow, that's my 2 cents worth on the topic.
No, I agree with you.
You know, I just want to mention, for Christmas, I got my 2 kids who are 7 and 10, these little banks that have 3 compartments, save, spend, and donate. And the save compartment's a little bigger than the spend and the donate. and just trying to teach the lesson very simply that way, that you have to think of it that way. You have to save some, you can't spend it all.
I never saw that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, it was really
Spend and donate part of it, because you really should teach them at an early age. I'm not saying give everything away, but
Right.
if you put $1 here and you put a quarter, so what? You put 10 cents or a quarter or whatever it is, because not-for-profits are having trouble right now too.
Very much so, yes, that's
You know.
true. Actually, we have a very good section on the toolkit just for nonprofits, because they're providing more services now more than ever. And I think it's 1 in 4 Americans are out of work right now, which is pretty awful.
Oh.
They're depending so much on these nonprofits for food, for emotional support, for housing assistance, for everything. And so the toolkit also directs nonprofits how to get low interest loans, what the federal government is doing, what the state government is doing, what New York City is doing. We try to be very helpful and encompass every type of resource that's out there.
I'm agreeing with you. Joe, I believe you know Eric Alexander.
Yes,
Yeah.
very well.
Actually, he's coming on next week.
Oh,
And
good.
what he is doing for this last 2 months, it's unbelievable. I
Yes,
mean,
yeah.
he's out there every day giving food to, just creating and organizing food drives and banks, et cetera, et cetera. And at one point, you don't even realize how many people needed it until you say picture after picture and line. It's not like 5 people online. We're talking hundreds and thousands of people online for food that you turn around and say, I can't even, actually, we give to the JCC now. I'm a member of the JCC, and on Sundays they'll have a drive. They have a food bank, but they don't keep it there. I don't really know who they're giving it to, and I don't really care who they give it to. So if my kids go shopping, my wife goes shopping, you buy like a 6-pack of beans or something and bring it up to them. But it's amazing, and Maria was saying that the number of people that aren't prepared, and you can pass off your mortgage and put off a credit card bill. But when you're hungry, you're hungry. And I don't know any supermarket that's going to let you fill up a cart and say, okay, you'll pay me next month, unless you happen to know a guy, which is a whole different story.
Right.
But I will say, I went to a food drive on Saturday in my own community, and there was a line of cars there to donate food, which was so great to see, how generous people are being, because they know their neighbors are struggling. So it's good to see that.
It's the truth. And I say, I would never, something like this, you would never imagine how bad it could get and how ill-prepared. And I'm not talking about the government. Ill-prepared every individual was. And goes back to Maria with savings and different things. I mean, if you had some extra money in the bank, you're going to go to the store and you're going to get, okay, the first couple of weeks it was hard to get anything.
Right.
But now, my kids go to the store for us, so they do this Instacart or direct something. They don't want me going, so I don't. And it's better that way, because then I don't have to pay for it. So I always turn around and say, oh, you brought the food. I don't have any cash on me. Daddy, really? So I get it for free. But you didn't
talk about a scam, John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, that's true
I hope
too.
they don't listen to this show, John.
Last night I told them how good the chicken cutlets were they gave me. We'll get you more. Just
One of
keep
the
giving
things
them
that-
compliments. Go ahead, Maria.
I'm sorry. One of the things, John and Otto, that the Comptroller has really been stressing is this office is very committed to returning phone calls to constituents that reach out to us. And as I said, we've been dealing with a lot of people who are having trouble getting their unemployment because, the whole system crashed, et cetera. But one of the things, and I had to come up to speed very quickly, we do call people back. We're often the only office that calls them back. And they're so happy to get a live human being on the phone, even just to listen to. But one of the things I learned very quickly, some people are having food issues. And so, we're sending them to food banks, telling them that the schools in New York City are offering breakfast, lunch, and dinner for free. And you know what? People need it. One woman didn't know she didn't have protection with eviction. and referring them to this toolkit. This is really, for a lot of people, this is really a survival. A lot of people are suffering, and, not to, it's just been a very hard time for a lot of people. And I think, John and Otto, you make a good point too. This happened so quickly that people really didn't even have time to think about it. They were working one day, and then 2 days later they were furloughed, or they were laid off, or one gentleman I've been working with, the company just saw the writing on the wall and said, we're terminating everybody. They closed the doors.
Oh, and there's a lot of that. And you will see a changed world when we come out of this. Each weekend, I have 6 grandkids, the oldest being 9, through 3 different daughters. And I was with the oldest grandson last weekend, but we keep distance. We sit in the backyard, and I don't see them. And I mean, I see them from a distance.
Right.
And the 9-year-old, I swear, he is a smart boy. He turns around and he says, Grandpa, this is going to be so different. I said, what do you mean? People, at the end of this, people will appreciate a hug and a high five. It's like, oh my God, it's so true. Because I don't touch him. He doesn't come near me. And if he comes near me, my wife screams. My daughter says, stay away from your grandfather. And so they don't understand. I mean, he understands.
Right.
But a 3-year-old doesn't understand why he can't come over and give me a hug.
Right.
We keep our masks on. And that's another daughter who has him. But it's amazing. And it's true. It's going to trickle down. Some people won't be affected. I think we all know that. They're going to come back when things get back 3, 4, 6 a year from now. Like nothing happened. They'll be nasty human beings like they've always been. But I think on balance, the bigger piece of the population will have changed. And I think they will change for the better, which is, you see it. I mean, the food banks is a perfect example that people are trying to step up. Go ahead, Otto.
Well, if you look back when, like, people who went through the Great Depression, like, 28, 29, people who went through that were very different than a lot of other people were, in my opinion. You didn't understand why they wouldn't put the air conditioner on, or why they wouldn't do this, or why they wouldn't do that. And it was all a mentality that they had built up because of being flat broke, and everybody around them was flat broke. Yeah. And I've witnessed a lot of people from that generation, they lived differently. They really did. And I think it came from that, if you look back on it. They went through a very difficult time.
Big guy, Otto, is I'm the son of a woman who went through the Depression. My mom, it really shaped her life quite a bit, and I was never allowed to leave any food on the plate. So if I didn't finish up my dinner, I got a guilt trip. So
it also goes back to, like, my parents were both in the World War II. My mother was a WAC, believe it or not. My father was in the Merchant Marine, and they grew up during the Depression. And their motto was, if you can't afford it, you don't buy it. And I think what we're going to see, and that goes back to the whole piece of financial education, teaching people, if you're going to buy this and you're going to put it on your credit card, and then you're going to miss a payment, you're going to get the interest from the credit card in addition to what you owe. And by the time you get finished paying for the TV or the stereo or the car or whatever it is, you could have bought 5 of them. And that gets back to what the Comptroller is trying to do, is to educate people that if you can't afford it, don't buy it. I mean, it's very basic things that we just have lost sight of and lost track of. And it used to be taught in schools, but it's gotten away from that. And that's a shame, because kids, what Joe and I have found is that when kids are taught personal finance, especially in high school, when you take out a paycheck and you show them, this is how much goes to the government, this is how, what you wind up in your pocket. This is real life stuff, and they're eager to learn. They're eager to learn. And we've been working with a lot of schools in Long Island and in the city primarily. Certain schools are teaching personal finance, and it's the kids' favorite class.
Wow, it is important.
There's a push on nationally. There's about 13 states now that have mandated a full semester of personal finance in high school. And, something has to be looked at, I think.
No, I think it makes sense. And what Maria was saying, if you put off buying that TV, and put the $50 away each month, you'd have the $600 at the end of the year to buy it. But if you put the $600 on the card and you pay the $50, it's going to cost you $1,200 in 3 years to pay for that lousy TV, and it's going to be obsolete at that point in time. This is Project Independence and You. I'm your host, John Ryan, and my co-host today is Otto Lohse. And we are here talking with Joe Galante, who is the New York State Assistant Comptroller, and with Maria Smith, who is the New York State Project Director. Did I say that right? The New York State Assistant, and what, Maria?
No, it's fine. I think you elevated both of us, but that's okay.
Well, I used to call him Chief of Staff, and he said, John, I'm not. So whatever. You're two important people to me, so that's fine.
Thank you.
And where I want to go now is something that this is not Corona related. This is not pandemic related whatsoever. This is everyday related. And that is the New York State Unclaimed Funds account, if that's how it's referred to. Because there's a small fortune there. And I don't know who wants to start, Maria or Joe, but many people don't know what it's about.
Sure. So, as part of his duties, State Comptroller DiNapoli is the trustee of over 15 billion, that's with a B, $1 billion of unclaimed funds.
Wow.
This could be anything from an uncashed check from an insurance company. It could be a rent deposit check that you didn't get back, or a rebate, or an insurance that someone left you that they couldn't track you down. They average about $250, the typical unclaimed funds account, but we have at least one account that's $1.3 million right now that's sitting in our fund waiting to be claimed, and we have a lot of other ones out there as well.
Now, can Joe, I want to interrupt. The 1.3 million, did it just get there? It's been there for a while.
Been there
if you can say.
It's been state, and it probably, has some history behind it that, is a reason that it's still not claimed.
Okay.
But yeah, typically there, it might be a savings account that someone hasn't made a transaction on that account for a period of time. One of the main reasons why funds go unclaimed is when people move. They may not notify an insurance company or a utility company, for example, of their new address. So say you put a deposit down on your gas service at your prior home. Now you move into an apartment. Well, if that gas company doesn't know where to find you, that check then comes to us. That money comes to us to hold. And we hold it in perpetuity. We have money in there from the 1940s, the 1950s that was put on deposit with us. Now, it's not all just sitting there. The state utilizes that money for other purposes, but we always guarantee that enough money will be in that account to make claims, to pay all the claims that come in. We currently pay about $275 million a year in claims to people who put in claims for unclaimed funds. And we get in sometimes over $700 million a year. So we have quite a bit of money coming in, and we want to return that money to New Yorkers. So again, our website, it's www.osc.state.ny.us. And on the website, you'll see a link, Unclaimed Funds. And when you click on that, it's kind of fun, actually. You go on and you can put in your last name and your first name and search to see if money's there for you. But what I like to do is before major holidays, I'll go on there and search all my relatives that I'm missing.
That's what I do.
And then when I show up dinner or Christmas dinner, I give them their claim forms and I say Merry Christmas or Happy Thanksgiving, and they get some money back. And typically you will find someone on there. So take a look, and it's fun to play around with the system there.
I actually have played around with it a couple of times, a few times as executor, looking, for maybe somebody had something that we didn't know about. But most of the time, as you described it, playing around, looking for friends, family, whatever, who I think might have a devious background and maybe have a couple of bucks laying around. But I do have $48 on there, which was connected to an American Express bill from Hertz as a corporate thing from the 1960s. but it's, but it's going to be there forever because there's no way I can backtrack that, But I found my name on there for $48, I think is the amount. And it was a American Express Hertz corporate thing, so it was, it's going to be there forever.
I just want to go back to what Maria said earlier when we were talking about beneficiaries and stuff. I'm sure money winds up there because, somebody passes away, an aunt, okay, but we don't know who we're friendly with her, but her husband may have passed away X number of years ago. Now she died, and we find 2 or 3 big accounts, but nobody's paying attention to the $3,000 account that's in one of the savings banks. And for whatever reason, it wasn't in her papers. We sell the house, and everybody moves on, and everybody split up $50,000, whatever they did, and that's there forever. And again, it goes back to beneficiaries and stuff, or transfer on death accounts. People need to be responsible because if you're going to bother having savings, make sure it gets passed on to somebody you want it to be passed on to, or even if you don't want to pass on to your kids, put the Salvation Army, put a church, put anything you want. Just don't let it. I'm not saying it shouldn't go to Tom, but let's get some use out of the money.
And John, I always tell the story back when my wife and I were engaged. I was on the phone with her one day. She said, "Oh, what are you doing at work?" I said, "I'm doing some work on some unclaimed funds." So she said, just for the heck of it, put my mom's name in because her mother died very young. She was, my wife was only 19 when her mother died. They didn't really have anybody that took care of a lot of the estate matters. So I put her name in, and the whole screen lights up with about a dozen different accounts, and it totaled about $14,000 in total. And again, this was a few months before our wedding, and we were wondering how we were going to pay for everything. And, it turned out that her mother helped pay for the wedding dress and a lot of other expenses towards the wedding. It was a real special thing for my wife and myself. So you never know. Not every story is that good, but even if it's $250, if it's your money, it should be in your pocket and not in our account. So Comptroller DiNapoli has actually done quite a few innovative things to make it easier to get the money back. We do outreach events. We do online events. We also now have online claiming where through a series of questions and through a form that you can fill out online, most accounts that are under a certain amount can be claimed directly online. And we issue a check usually within 3 days that gets generated and sent out to the person. So that's been a real help and cleared up a lot of the backlog of paperwork and also made it a lot more efficient for people to get their money back.
Okay, Otto.
No, just a quick question. Is this a New York State thing, or is unclaimed funds like every state has it?
Every state has a custodian of unclaimed funds, and it is done by state. New York happens to have one of the larger pots of unclaimed funds. Just being the financial capital of the world and our population here, we do have quite a bit more. One thing I should mention, because we've talked about scams before, and many people will get in the mail a letter saying, we found that you have New York State unclaimed funds and you can claim it by signing this letter and sending it back. There are legitimate companies out there. They're called finders, and they, similar to how you and I can go on the website, they can go on and look up names or do it by a computer match, and they will send out letters to people and businesses and nonprofits to say, hey, we located this money for you, and for a 15% commission, which they are allowed under law to get 15%, we'll get the money for you. Well, I always tell people, do it yourself, because they're submitting the same paperwork you would submit, and they're getting 15% of your money. So we've made it very simple. There's a printable form on the website. A lot of claims, as I said, can be done right online, and this is your money, so you deserve to get all of it, and not get 15% to somebody.
I agree with that 100%. Do it yourself. But I want to go back just for one quick moment to the story with you and Kimberly. And just, it's money, which is as cold as can be. But that turns something so wonderful, as far as I'm concerned, that basically her mother was at the wedding with the dress and the dinner and everything else. that's special. And there's other people that may have that option. Get on the line and look. And even if it's nothing but $50, $50 can buy a vase or can pay for a Sunday dinner. And you can turn around and say, this was from mommy or nanny or grandma, whatever you call her, that it's there. And sometimes there's nothing but cold money, but I never heard that one before. That's a wonderful.
I helped another gentleman a number of years back, and his aunt had set up his bar mitzvah account, and she had passed away, and he didn't know where this account was, and there was like $4,000 of his bar mitzvah money in this account, and I helped him through the process. He got some paperwork after she passed, and the fact that it was in his name as well, and we were able to get him back that money, and that was very special to him, because it was his aunt had set that account up and everything. So
Yeah, no, I mean, some of them are great stories. Go ahead, Otto.
Yeah, maybe you could write a book about the stories that are connected to unclaimed funds. There was a show on television a while back about postal packages that were lost, and they try to trace the packages. You can almost do it about the unclaimed funds, and you would be like the lead story.
You could all write a book because they all have 1,000 stories. One other one that was amazing was someone, a former elected official in Nassau County, reached out to me. He and his wife had a diamond engagement ring in a bank safe deposit box. Well, they had moved out of the area, and then one day they decided she wanted to get her ring back. They go to the bank's no longer there. It's torn down to the ground.
Oh, God.
So they called me. Now, up until like the 1950s, this was the Office of Abandoned Property. So we had everything from, furniture to personal items to jewelry and everything else. That got very unruly, in New York to house all that. So over the years, they had different laws related to different things. Well, anyway, I was able to connect him with someone from Citibank, who was the bank where it was. And again, they hadn't provided their new address to the bank to tell them that they had their items in possession. So it was in a warehouse in New Jersey, and they got their ring back. So that was a nice story.
Yeah, it is a nice story.
You ain't kidding. It's tremendous. We're at a time, guys, and I want to thank both Maria and Joe for helping us out today by participating with this. I mean, the stuff that's going on in the Comptroller's office is absolutely wonderful. And within the state of New York, every resident should be proud of the office and everybody in there. You've been listening to Talk Radio on 88.1 FM and WCWP.org. I want to specifically thank Joe Galante and Maria Smith for all your help with us today, and have a wonderful weekend, everyone.